and thank you for being at this session. Hopefully everyone has a fun day till now. It's a long day. It is, I think, about 13 hours. So hopefully I come with something new for you. So I'm going to talk about industrial metaverse. And let me first start with myself. So I am indeed a mixed reality MVP, and I'm working with Avanade as a global, it's a long title, XR Technology Industrial Metaverse Lead. What it means, I'm playing with a lot of cool things, and I'm thinking about how you can do things differently with those technologies to improve things at clients. Now, the 4 pillars I focus mainly on are things like productivity, which is mainly on the dynamics corner. Think about the first-party apps of Microsoft, Remote Assistant guides. However, Remote Assist is partly starting to become replaced by guides, but that's another story. Of course, industrial metaverse, how you can leverage metaverse worlds, but from an industrial perspective. So not per se for HR or having events or meetings, but do it a bit differently. Think about bringing digital twins into a metaverse world. And in this case, and I will explain it a bit later, that when I talk about metaverse, it's not always a virtual world. The third one is innovation. I love this because what I love to do is, and especially when you think about the Microsoft technology, is bringing all those technologies together and create something which clients can benefit from. And I'm actually going to show you some examples of how that actually could look. And the fourth one is community. I think that's one of the reasons why I became an MVP, is I'm running the Global XR Community, formal mixed reality user group in the Netherlands, and we're holding big, large events also, something like this, but I will not go in that for now. A bit about myself, and this is going to be like really a nerdy thing. I love to cycle on one of my bikes, and this is one of my bikes, which is a fat tire bike of Rad. I'm a fun painter of Warhammer 40K figures with a family, which is big because I have 4 kids. We go a lot on vacation with the caravan and doing campsites, but it's luxury. So, and of course, and this is an important one, and probably I'm playing it tonight again, is Starfield. I am in love with this game. Everyone who has an Xbox, please try this out. This is so cool. Now, enough about that. So the agenda. So I'm going to do a small, not all too small, but an introduction to what we call metaverse, and specifically industrial metaverse. And then I'm going through several examples to talk about how that actually can come into a solution and what the advantages are of that. Now, first of all, and probably some of the things you already heard in this day, is where metaverse comes from. And it was actually coined in 1992 in a sci-fi novel. So it's actually not a new term, as a lot of people think. And that's a bit of a fun story. This is something which I think is very important because, and this is for everyone different. So for me, or for Avanade, I work for, if we talk about metaverse, it's about spending physical places and digital spaces and enabling us to collaborate and exchange value by doing shared interaction and experiences. And what I mean by that is by applying technology in different ways to bring people together and to create value. And that is exactly what our clients want to do. And this is what I also try to achieve. And that's the fun part of my job. Now, I will do only one marketing slide because I think it's an important one, because it gives a bit of an idea of where the future is going to be. And I know generative AI has been big this year, but metaverse is still going to be strong and going to be even bigger. And as Bloomberg Intelligence actually said, is they expect a valued marketing of 800 billion into 2025 and even go higher. Now, this is not only industrial metaverse. This is about worlds, things like what Nike is doing. It's about HR, it's about living maybe completely virtually. But it gives a bit of an idea how big the pie is when it comes to metaverse. And this is really interesting. Now, there are different shapes of metaverses, and I'm not going through each of those. Well, I will go a little bit through those, but for me, there are actually 4. I know there's a lot of people do 3, but I actually do 4. So one, of course, is called the consumer one. And that's the one where you and me are playing games on a virtual reality headset, having a social entertainment, hanging out with people, going to events. The second one is more commercially. And that's where you can actually put Microsoft Mesh, which is going to be hopefully this year somewhere in a public preview. And that's all about collaboration, working together in a virtual space or maybe in a space which is encapsulated, because a space per se does not have to be virtually. It can actually be augmented. It could also be just a power app, which allows people to work together. Then the third one, and that's the one I'm into, is in digital metaverse. And that's more about, and the funny thing is, it says enables humans and AI to work. This is a definition by Microsoft. What I like about it is that they integrate AI. And that is actually a very important thing, because when it comes to industrial metaverse, we're also talking about digital twins, bringing data together and doing something with that data. And AI is there a very important part of. The last one is what I call world. And that's about connecting the physical and the real world. And why that is an interesting one, it's a very futuristic one. It's about thinking a step further. So what you normally have, like decentralized land, you buy land, you pay for it, and they can sell as much as they want. When you talk about world, it's about creating a physical, a virtual, and I'm not specifically talking about virtual reality, but a virtual world as a copy of the physical world, and maybe even go beyond. And that means that when you have, and let's do it, for example, with spaces you can buy, it's about selling one particular place one time and having the ability to own that and then reflect that onto projects. But it is a very futuristic one. It's one which will eventually come to a point where we will get there. It's a bit of Star Trek. Now, talking about industrial metaverse, I actually use like this diagram for that. I made it because I wanted to explain what for me it means. So when I talk about industrial metaverse, it's about combining technologies to drive productivity. That is a bit different than what other people say about metaverses, because for me, it's about creating something which will drive a process, will enhance a process, will make life better, empower the workforce, giving them more time to do other things. And that can actually be at several things. And think about just simplistic products and services within the company, but also think about design when a company is the manufacturing, of course, productivity, but also think about working together, having a virtual meeting. That's like a bit of one of the other metaverses, and then you see the overlap coming. It's about learning. Could be virtual ideation, but think about having a virtual or maybe an augmented training using guides in classroom training. It could be inspections by doing remote tasks using, and now I'm going to make it a bit fun, not remote assist, but guides. And that's another story for later. But all these things will help companies to drive their productivity. But it's not all about this. And this is an important thing, because you have to think about more than this. Think about security and privacy. So who is who in a space where you work together? You need to think about the moderation if it's a virtual world, but maybe about if it is a safe area, not everyone can come into that area. You need to think about skilled networks, because when you build different metaverses, and there is a lot going on in this world, it becomes interesting. And the best way to explain this is, if I buy something in one metaverse, it means that I want to use it in the other metaverse too. I don't want to buy it again. I want to use that same thing there. And that means that you need to think about persistence and distribution between metaverses. And of course, the fact that you're always being connected to Azure cloud. But it doesn't stop with that. You need to think about how people are actually showing up, because my presence can be, as I'm now doing on the camera, which I love the most. I'm not so fond on the avatars, for example, because it's still not a real person. But it could even be that someone wants to show themselves completely different from an avatar or from himself. Now, another thing is, and this is an important thing, especially with industrial metaverse, is about accessibility. because you will need to support employees who have disabilities. You can't just make a solution which will work for most of your employees. You need to be inclusive. It needs to work for everyone. Everyone needs to have the ability to benefit from it. And then last but not least, and this is a very important thing, specifically when it comes to industrial metaverses, it is about the devices and software you're going to use. Because depending on what kind of metaverse you build, if it's virtual, it's augmented, you're using HoloLens 2, you're using a virtual reality set like Oculus Quest, or you may be using Power Apps or just a tablet, it defines what is needed. And then, of course, you need to think about payment systems, is how I'm going to integrate those. Think about NFT, cryptocurrencies. The creation of these platforms, because that actually, even with industrial metaverse, it can break it or win it. It depends on how people are using it. And last, but definitely not least, is operational services. Because, and this is an interesting one, when you build things like, which is meant for industrial metaverse, it needs to incorporate data from backend system. Think about a CRM and ERP system. Think about SAP or Dynamics, for example, or leveraging services from the cloud or from the internet. And there are several examples to do that, and I will get back to those ones in a bit. Now, for me, Metaverse is driven through what we call extended reality. And a lot of people, and I'm using the slide, and I know everyone knows this slide because I think it has been presented so many times in the last years by almost every company when we talked about extended reality or mixed reality or whatsoever. It's about having the ability to do virtual, which is completely included, so completely immersed in virtual reality. It's about augmented, meaning having an overlay, or mixed reality, which means I can actually incorporate the environment. But for me, extended reality goes way further than that, because when I talk about an enterprise XR, it's about way more than that. We have devices, think of smartphones, think about wearables. Think about the virtual reality headset, smart devices like a smart camera, which is able to identify certain things going on when you can actually use AI again to identify if, for example, someone is not wearing a hard hat in a space and then point it out as a safety hazard. Again, the technologies, as we mentioned, and specifically generative AI. And this is an important thing because I see a lot of people talk about generative AI, that is going to be, everything is going to be generative AI. It's not going to be. It's very simplistic. It's not going to happen. But generative AI is specifically within the industry and within digital metaverse becomes important to support the worker. And think about providing information so that he can actually do his work better than normal. It is definitely not about taking tasks over, to my opinion, because that will still be in the hand of the worker. Now, of course, we have the applications and services, which is a lot when you talk about Microsoft technology. But these are some of those. I still have remote assistant there. And again, as I've said some times ago, Microsoft Guides is going to be the future of both of those two. And that is because Guides now incorporate remote assist functionality and even in a better way. Now, and then, of course, the solutioning, think about building your own services, building accelerators. I'm going to show two of those, even low-code, no-code solutions. And this is important, the integration with all the platforms, Internet of Things, Digital Twins, Dynamics 365 field services. And I'm going to show examples of where we're doing this. Power Platform. This is interesting. Think about a guide where you have a step-by-step augmented training or an inspection you need to execute on a machine. And then using Power Platform to show a Power App, which shows live IoT data. So you know that when you turn off the switch, that the power goes off the machine. And then you can move on to the next step. And that is the integration. OpenAI, of course, and Microsoft 365 is for the modern workplace. Now, as you already noticed when I'm talking, it's all about, and I love this part the most, that's the innovating part, is bringing things together and build something which a company or which a process can leverage from and can become better. And this is one of the biggest things I like about when we talk about Microsoft technology. It is the effect that I can build solutions based on the strength of that platform, by just combining products and services to empower the workforce in organizations. Because and this is the cool thing with Microsoft, is that when you use a service, it already has security integrated. Scalability is there. It has the ability to integrate with at least a dozen of other services which extend it, and it becomes more and more and better. And the better part is, and you will see that happening in this and next year, is that instead of the need for building connections and writing a lot of custom code, that actually starts to move a bit to low code and no code. And not because we have generative AI writing the code for us, but because the integration of those services becomes so good that with easy visual screens, you can combine them and connect them to each other. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to, I think, about 5 examples, which I want to show you how industrial metaverse can be, while it's not even actually being a virtual world in some cases, and which allows you, and which leverages some of these things I already explained. Now, the first I'm going to talk about is vegetation management. Now, vegetation management is about, as I already saying, efficiency assessments around vegetation growth. Now, the example I'm going to do is about using extended reality to perform inspections of vegetation growth and decline near power lines. And just to give you a bit of an idea, and this is an important one, and now you can also understand what the business case is behind these things, is that there are electrical companies in America, for example, that spend more than a few $100 million only on managing vegetation around power lines. Because if a tree becomes too long, it can fall on the power lines or the distribution lines and can actually create an outage. In some situations, when there is in the winter, for example, people can actually die by not having electricity. So it is a very important part. Now, the example I'm going to show you, or I'm going to talk about, is specifically for power lines. But as you can imagine, you can also apply this to, for example, pipelines or something else, as long as there's management around it, in this case, vegetation. Now, the normal way of how this happens is that when vegetation growth or decline needs to be checked, there is there are companies in the world who actually do get that data. So what first happens is that geospatial data is being analyzed, and in principle, what they do is they identify a tree. They can actually, the company we work with is Satellytics, for example. They can identify the height of the tree, but also the quality of the tree. If the tree is ill, for example, which is a very important thing to know, because it can actually fall over. Now, all that data is then being collected, and based on that, alerts is being generated, and it's all done on GeoJSON data. So everything is geo-based. Now, what normally happens is that an inspector goes out and needs to go to the location. Sometimes these locations are very difficult to reach. So the difference is, what we are going to do is we want to do it a bit differently. So we said, let's bring mixed reality in the picture and create a visual representation of the situation based on the analytics data and, for example, map data. And then what we do is we, when the person can do then an assessment, and this is the fun thing, multiple people can do the assessment together, which creates like a metaverse kind of a way, because I'm able to collaborate together to exchange value, which is one of our definitions for this. And then when the assessment is done, generate automatically a work order, assign everything to the work order, the right tools, the right equipment. Now, how does that look like on a high-level diagram? So we have Satellytics who generates GIS data. They generate alert data, asset information. So asset information is about the tree, but it is also about the towers, for example, where the distribution lines and power lines are going over. Now, then we use big maps for the map visualization. And then we're leveraging Dynamics Field Services in this case to have the ability to create work orders based on an incident type. And the incident type determines what tools and what type of people or roles are required to do so. Now, that's all being incorporated. The reason why we actually use HoloLens for this is very simple, because while you can use a tablet and doing AR, it makes more sense to walk around something and not look through a window on a small screen. By using things like HoloLens 2 or maybe Magic Leap or in a mixed reality device, it allows you to actually take it all up and have the ability to fully assess the situation. Now, in some cases, this assess the situation will not be enough, but as you can imagine, most cases it does. Now, this just gives you an alert management journey. As I said, we're capturing data, an alert is generated, a work order is being set out, vegetation management takes place. I'm going to show that in a few seconds from now. Then we have the work order automation created. Work is being scheduled. Work is being executed by the person who needs to solve the problem, which means to cut the trees down or even remove those, or plant trees if there is no vegetation going on and there need to be vegetation because of rules and regulations. And then they register the work, making pictures, finalize the work order, goes back in the system, and you can actually analyze this. And what you understand about this is it uses dynamics, it uses sensory data, it uses AI in this case, and machine learning and XR technology. Now, let me show you how that will look like. So in this case, and this is the thing, Satellytics is collecting the data, creates data around the vegetation, generates alerts. So the inspector uses the headset and has the ability now to look at one of the alerts and to have an idea of what is going on. He is then able to create a real world solution. So what we actually know how large the distribution lines are. We also know how large the trees are. And we can make it so that the trees are in the same so in this case, the tree is, for example, 30 meters, while the power line is 50 meters, the distribution line. And you will actually see the difference in that. Now, you also see that the tree has another color, and that's because this tree is actually ill, causing a problem. And this allows them to actually start to assess the information. And what they can do is they can add additional information to that map. Think about the roads, because they want maybe to know if there are roads in a nearby neighborhood, because in some situations there are even no roads available, and many more other information. And then lastly, not least, they can then do an assessment. And instead of in an assessment summing things up, we just present, and this is data which flows from field services. We show a list of things like which they can check on, if there is a permit required, if it's close to a road. They can decide what type of trucks are being needed. Think about a work truck or a bucket truck because the tree is very high. They can even specify how many people needs to be there. And then pressing at that point, the create a work order will actually generate the work order in the system. And that will eventually set out the whole mechanism. Now, and this shows you an example of industrial metaverse using different kind of technologies. The second one I want to talk about is control site. So control site is actually an idea we came up with. We were thinking, this is actually the thing I started with when I started with Avanade. And the idea with control site was, how can we, and you need to think about, this was 3 years ago, that how can you leverage that current technology and bring things together to solve challenges with clients? And control site was born because what the biggest problem is when you build out digital twin solutions is that it can be very expensive to build them because all the stuff you need around it. And we had the idea of why not build something which allows us really easily to have something set up in just a few weeks and to show to someone how it can actually work, which they can use to gain interest within the organization and move forward and see what they can do. And the idea with ControlSight is that we actually bring a lot of things together. Think about the Dynamics 365 platform again, digital twins, AI, sensory data of IoT sensors. And of course, the integration with guides from remote assist, and I will explain that one. Now, first of all, what we did was thinking about, if we talk about challenges with companies, what are the most immediate challenges companies have? We came with 3. So the first one is preventing accidents and improving safety. And think about that. Let's say that you have a person which is working on a plant, and a certain machine turns on, and within that radius of that machine, the danger radius, let me put it that way, the person is in that range. He could get a notification on his mobile phone, and augmented wayfinding is being used to bring the person to a safe area. It also allows you, if you think further, that you could actually create a virtual metaverse where people can actually see if people are applying the safety rules on a plant, where you can have on a map showing when some safety is not being achieved and again, needing use of AI to, for example, identify if someone is wearing its hard hat, or if in this case, the person is within a certain range of a machine. Now, that one has been done many times, and we said, we don't want to do that one. It is an interesting one, but we're going to do another one. The second we came up was enabling remote work and increasing productivity. Now, that's an easy one. That's actually doing remote assistance, like offering support through a call, which is nowadays done through guides already. And secondly, increasing productivity by supporting step-by-step augmented processes or training, and much more of those things. So these can be already achieved by existing applications of Microsoft. Now, the third one was the one which we found really interesting, and that was thinking about improving processes, controls, and having insights. But this is an important thing, having insights based on the context of the user, which is important. Now, the idea we came up with was, so if you talk about insights and control, you need to do something like, first of all, collect live asset data. That means that you need to collect data from IoT sensors, think about dynamic field services, because you need to know the facility, the work orders, maybe outstanding tasks, etc. But also what assets, the engineers in the system, which are the bookable resources, which is specifically Dynamics stuff. Now, what we did is we brought that all together. And then we said, let's create a digital footprint by using Azure Digital Twins. And what we did was we actually create dynamically digital twins within the Azure Digital Twin instance. So our twin consists of what we call static and dynamic twins. Static twins are twins which are already existing in there because they are not changing. Think about the machine. The machine is not going away. It will always be there. But a person who is working on the plant, but is not working always, is also as a resource within the digital twin present. And we can even connect them to other twins to explain that that person is at that work order working or at that asset. Now, the third thing we did was target specific locations, but this is an important one, based on the roles, because you want to give people based on the location, based on the work order, based on the work they need to do, the right information, and give them then control to actually execute the work. And that is what is ControlSight. Now, that means that, for example, the difference in information for the operational manager is different than for the one who is the field technician, because the operational manager wants to see just an overview of what's going on, while the field and technician only wants to see the work he's working on. Now, on a high level, I'm not going to bore you with this, but it gives you a bit of an idea. It consists of different things. And here you can see how many things we're using. We're using a lot of Azure. We're using the first-party apps of Microsoft, using guides and remote assist, but nowadays only guides. We're using IoT sensory data. And this example uses HoloLens too, but you can also implement WebGL by using a browser or any other. And I'm going to think a step further. What if we implement this with Mesh for Teams? Able to create a virtual collaborative space and extend the application with that capability. And there you have again, we will have control site plus. Now, so what we do is as I said, we auto-generate digital twins. So digital twins are automatically generated based on the data coming in. Think about sensory data, think about a resource which starts to work orders which are initiated. Work orders will also be removed when they are finished. And then there are two ways you can do with the visual context. So one of what you could do is using the standard Azure Digital Twins 3D scenes viewer, which allows you easily and quickly design an immersive view, which is web-based. But I'm actually not sure it's still in preview. This is a little bit older slide, so it could be it's not in preview anymore. Apologies for that. But the other one is, and this is something we see a lot with when we start working with clients, is that clients always want a bit more. And unfortunately, the standard solutions of digital twins 3D scenes is a bit limited to what you can actually do. So what we did with Control Site was building on top of an OpenXR framework and build it more flexible and able to bring all these things together. Now, let me show you how that works. So in this case, we have someone who wants to leverage end-to-end telemetry, improve safety, products, and processes. So the operation manager gets a notification on the mobile phone. This is about a utility company where the power transformer goes down. So they get a notification on the mobile phone. The operational manager uses the HoloLens, gets a map, can actually see that there is a facility in Belgium, in this case, and they want to drill down in that facility to see what's going on. They will get a 3D view of that facility, and they can also see what are the power transformer having issues, and real-time IoT data actually flows in. And this is important to understand. So so all the data goes actually to a digital twin, and all the data is reflected in a digital twin and then reflected in the output. So in this case, it's an HoloLens too, but as I explained first, you can do this with different types of technologies and even using just a power app. But the technology allows you to work together and not even in the same location. Now, the person can assign a work order to a field technician. That field technician goes on its way, goes to that location, try to solve the problem. And if they're not able to do that, they can use the same application. But they will now get contextual information explaining about the power transformer, a bit more about the assigned work orders. And when that person has, I was a bit afraid of that. My deck is a bit big and my deck just crashed. If they want to understand a bit more about the transformer, they can start up guides out of this application and go into a step-by-step instructions explaining how this transformer, this is just a transformer 10 times smaller than its normal is, to get explained how the device needs to be solved, how the problem can be solved. Now, and if that's not possible, they can actually do a remote call with an expert. The second one I want to talk about is automated documentation. Now, with automated documentation, we want to leverage OpenAI to support field technician workers by using for my first person view. Now, what it means is, I'm actually going to skip this slide because it gives a bit of an idea, but the idea is we're going to create automatically documentation of someone doing his work to create knowledge articles for himself, but also for organization and for other employees, especially if there's a lot of people going in and out within short work terms. Now, how does it work? So, for example, we have a work order for maintenance, inspection, or issue resolving. The work is being scheduled, and then a field technician goes start to do the work on site. Now, what the work is then done is it's going to be recorded from a first-person view. And that can be done on a hard hat. Think about a mobile and a standard. It doesn't need to per se to be a complex device like HoloLens. The recording is being uploaded into the work order, And at that moment, we're starting to use OpenAI. And what we're doing is we're analyzing the video frame by frame and with Vision API. But the problem with Vision API is that Vision API just doesn't understand that I'm working, for example, on a power box or something. It just sees I'm working on a machine. So we need to give it a bit of context. There are two ways to do that. You can actually train Vision API, but it means that with every new client and every new type of device, you need to build training within Vision API. But you can also do it differently. What we actually did was we said, we're going to ask ChatGPT. And in this case, we said, ChatGPT, you're going to be the field worker. So we actually told ChatGPT, we explained them the role of the field worker based on the information of field services. We told him what the role description was. We also know the work order, so we told him what the work order is, what the workers need to be done. And because the work order is related to an asset, we can also tell him what type of asset it is. So we actually used ChatGPT to replace the Vision API title to a more logical title. Now, all that information is done, doubles are removed, and then we again ask ChatGPT to write an article based on that information. The article is being published as a knowledge article in Dynamics and related to the work order. The person can approve it, can make some changes because it's not always perfect, as you can imagine. And then you have a knowledge article. Very simplistic, using different technologies together to empower your workforce. Now, how does that work? So this is an example where we have a first-person view video recording taking place. So in this case, it's just using a camera, but as you can imagine, this could even be done by a RealWear device recording with a video using HoloLens, and even using a simple camera on the hard hat. Secondly, the video is being uploaded into the work order within Dynamics. And then we have the whole OpenAI stuff going on, what I just explained. We tell ChatGPT, you are that field technician, please do that. The system will then generate a knowledge article in field services. It's bound to the work order, and there's a notification sent to that person. And as you can see, we actually get something like the Hofmann PV combiner box is an excellent choice for solar installations, rated for up to 90 amps, 15 amps per input. Because what we also do, and I even didn't tell you, because in some cases, like the PV combiner box, that information can be found on the internet. So it will be available to ChatGPT. But if it's about in a technology like devices which are specifically for a client or the devices they are maintaining, like, for example, any type of machine, it doesn't matter what, that documentation can be found. And what we actually use is based on the asset description, we use cognitive search to go through articles and give them a descriptive text back based on the asset, and then give that back to ChatGPT to give them even more context about what the work is being done. And as you can imagine, this can be tweaked in different directions. It's something we already built. So we actually have it configurable, so you can tweak it in any direction. Because this will differ per client, because it differs in the way of how the video is being recorded. It differs on how the work is being done. If you're seeing hands or just seeing the machine or just seeing a part of it. So the third one I'm going to talk about, because I have to move a bit quicker, I have not so much time left, is the intelligent field worker. This is a really nice one. So the idea about this is, why not having a field worker being held by a virtual person? That could be a real person, but could also be an AI person. Now, in my example, I'm using, again, a HoloLens. I have done a lot with HoloLens, so that was the first thing I wanted to do. It also makes sense because a field worker could wear a mixed reality device. And we actually created a simple robot, but you can imagine it could also be a person in front of you staying. And what we do is we have the ability to have a conversation AI application, which means that I can speak to it. And then we use prompt engineering with ChatGPT, and we use speech to text and text to speech back to have a conversation. Now, what I'm going to show you is a prompt where we actually have said that he is David, but that's funny because it's actually a female voice. But yeah, in this world, everything is possible. And we told him it's a skilled field technician support engineer with several years of experience of repairing coffee machines. Now, there's a whole description over there which tells you what he needs to do. So I'm going to show you what happens. So hopefully everyone can hear the sounds.
Sorry, Alexander, there's no sound.
There is no sounds. Oh, that is, let me try to share again, because that is a too bad thing. I have included computer sound. Hello there. Could you hear that? Saying me hello there?
Yeah, heard that.
Okay, perfect.
Hello. How can I help you with your coffee machine today?
The coffee machine is broken.
I'm sorry to hear that. Can you provide more details about the issue you're experiencing with your coffee machine? This will help me to better diagnose the problem and provide a solution.
There's no water running. You notice she's thinking long. And this has to do with the fact that she's actually creating a very long response. So you can change that, of course.
If there's no water running through your coffee
But it is real
machine,
time,
follow
so
these
it
steps
takes
to
some time
troubleshoot
to
the
get it
issue.
back.
1. Check the water reservoir.
But as you can imagine, now think about this, having someone working on a machine and you get some AI helping you out. Now, in this case, I chose the way of you can talk to it and it talk back. But you can also think about that it actually pops up several documents explaining what could maybe a solution to resolve the problem. But now think further. What if, because if I'm wearing an HoloLens, I would actually be able to understand my spatial surrounding. I could actually let the AI ask, can you move around the machine? Let me show you the back of the machine because I think the problem is over there. And now it starts to become a very interactive way of being helped out. And I could even pull in another person, a real life person. So the worker actually gets its own industrial metaverse experience. Now, this on its own is not so, it's just an example of where you can go in what direction, but it hopefully explains a bit of what you can do with today's technology. Now, the last one I want to go to is, I don't gonna go too much to this, but I just want to mention it. So Mesh for Teams at the moment is in private preview. So we can't talk too much about this, but I think, and the content I have here is based on what is out there at the moment. I think if you think about Mesh for Teams is a really interesting one. I already mentioned it earlier. The advantage with Mesh for Team is that you actually get a platform which is virtual and which allows you to collaborate together. Being able to build your own custom worlds and to build stuff in there. So just like the example you see in the video here, is they actually bringing a digital twin in there. Now, what is the advantage with this is that I don't see a field technician in the field that's going to use Mesh for Teams and then having its digital twin visible. But from an operational manager view, it could be interesting to discuss problems around machines. And because not everyone, like the field worker on the plant, has an idea of where the machine is. And in early days, what we do is we take pictures of the location of the machine and put that in field services. Now you're able to show the actual location, but also where the machine is, how big it is. I've been with clients where I thought they were talking about a machine which is no bigger than 10 meters. And when I actually looked it up, that machine was as big as 4 houses. It just gives you a better understanding. The same thing goes for if you, for example, want to Yeah, and the other thing I want to say about this is that because it's part of the Microsoft platform, it already integrates the collaborative futures. It already integrates security. So a lot of the things you don't need to do anymore. You can really easily integrate your backend systems and services and build your own stuff around it. And that makes it so much fun. So I think this one is a really important one, which will come up hopefully this year already, available for everyone to play around with. Now, just to wrap up. So when I talk about Industrial Metaverse, again, it's about enabling humans and AI to work together to design, build, operate, and optimize physical systems using digital technologies. And you have seen me that showing in some of the examples by combining different technologies. And again, it is about the strength, because that's what Microsoft technology offers at the moment, even integrating with non-Microsoft technology. And thirdly, it's all about, and this is our own definition, about spanning that physical and virtual world together. And very important, to exchange or produce value, which can be done through a shared interaction or a shared experience. And yeah, just being a compilation platform, having it AI driven, or just being an application which enhances the capability of workers. Again, it's not new, something we're already doing many, many years, but it now starts to make sense for everyone. So thank you.